Hi, this is Kevin Wilson of the Urban Homesteading School in Powell River on the west coast of Canada. So let's talk about soil blockers here. These two are two sizes of soil blockers, and what they do is they make compressed blocks of soil. So you use potting soil of a type that holds together well. You really just have to test what you've got and see what works best. For the tiny blocks, you have to make sure it's pretty fine textured. These 2-inch larger blocks can take a more coarse textured soil, but it has to be wet to hold together. Much wetter than you would think. Not sort of runny, sloppy, but wet so that it holds together in chunks. Now, the good thing about these soil blockers, obviously, is there's no containers at all, so there's no container waste. They do have some downsides as well. It takes a bit of practice to make them, so you've got to practice and get some skill at actually making the blocks for it to go particularly quickly. When you begin, the first few times you do it, it's slow and clunky and feels really awkward. One of the things they tell you about these is that the roots air prune themselves when they get to the edge of the block. That's true if there's plenty of air around the block, but if you've got your blocks that have been made in a 4-way blocker like this and put next to each other in your tray, the blocks are very close together and the roots will grow from one to another. So that's kind of partly, but not really. These come with different fittings inside them. You can get either just like a little pin, which makes a nice little dip for a seed, or you can get them with a cube in them, which is the same size as the blocks that are made by this blocker. So you can make lots of tiny blocks here, grow your tomatoes one in each, and as soon as they pop them up into these, which you make with the square dip in the top, and they just pop straight in. That does have the disadvantage that you can't bury the tomato stem, but you can do that later on when you plant the larger block. So let's just have a go here. You need two. I'm just going to move things around a bit here just for a moment. Move those two over, move that over, and this further in here. Yeah, it's hard to get this really visible, but what you do is you press down and squirm from side to side to really fill those cavities so that when you bring it out, it's full right to the very brim. You can press it in, scrape it off a bit, and then you put it where you want it and use the handle like this to lift up and off, and there are your blocks. So I'm going to move those over so you can have a better look at those. So these have the square in the top, the cube, so that you can put the tinies in, and these just have a dip in the top to take a seed. And as you can see, they are quite close together. You might wonder what this is on the bottom here. Well, it's not completely necessary for these bigger 2-inch blocks, but I'll show you what happens when you make these tiny blocks and put them straight into a tray. So you do the same thing, put it in, press it in, squidge it around. The idea being to make sure that the soil gets completely into the cavities, and then scrape it off level. No need to waste any. And you come down here, and if you put it straight on the tray, these trays have ridges in them to help with drainage. So you put it straight on the ridges. If you can get it to come out. There we go. Yeah, you can see what's happening there. They're falling down. They fall to one side off the ridges and don't stand, and it's also really hard to get hold of them and get them out and move them around. So rather than doing it like this, what I do is get some of this plastic embroidery canvas, which is made for people sew patterns onto it and make things out of it, like Kleenex box covers and that kind of thing. It shows up in thrift stores quite regularly in different sized pieces. You can also buy it new, but why would you do that? All you're going to do is put plants on it. But the great thing is that it's flat, but it also drains. So if I do this again, okay, so I've got this nice and full right up to the brim, and I stand it on this piece of grid. Now, if I need to, I can lift the whole thing up, and it's really easy to move them around. And you can make these so that they are exactly the right size for one pair, or in fact, I think this may be made so that if you put them that way around, you get two sets on. I also made a little tool out of some aluminum flashing, which is just a kind of Z shape, so you can slip it under one of these teeny tiny blocks and just lift it up, because they're fragile and they're hard to get hold of. But the great thing about these blocks, with them being so tiny, is you can plant a lot of seeds in a very small space. If you can get like 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3, 4, so 12 times this, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 times 20, so 240 of these tiny little cubes in one tray, 240 plants. It's really very good, especially if you're not quite sure how well your seeds are going to germinate. If you've got some seeds which are a little bit wonky, well, then you can put one in each. And the ones that don't germinate, that's okay, they're not taking up much space. You just take the ones that did germinate, pop them up into a larger container, throw the soil from the rest back in the pot and use it again. So you're not wasting larger space on things which are not going to grow. Oh, I should have showed you putting the little cubes into there. Let's make another set. There we go. Okay, so this is actually working better now that I've got it going. I think it needs a bit of soil in and out of it a few times to lubricate all the parts, and then it actually makes better blocks. But let's take one of these little cubes off the corner here. There we go. And we just pop it straight in there. There we go. So your little tomato plant might be popping out of that tiny cube here. Not all of them germinated. Take the ones that did, put them right in the hole there, and then your 2-inch cube like that has now got a tomato plant growing in it with almost no root disturbance. Now, you don't have to put these in these bigger blocks. You can pot them up in anything. You can pot them up in cell packs or newspaper pots or whatever you've got that you're going to use. They're just very, very handy. You can get bigger ones of these so that you can make about a 5-inch cube. So those are, there's a lot of root room in those. You can grow big husky plants of squash and other large plants like that. You can also get these so they make more at once, and so they are foot operated, so you're standing up making lots and lots of soil blocks. And that's meant for people who are growing a lot of plants in greenhouses at soil level rather than up on tables. But even for those of us who grow under lights or grow on the windowsill, very handy little thing.